Well, a very good evening. Thank you so much, everybody, for walking into the session. A very warm welcome to Imagine 2019. It's great to have all of you here with us this evening, and it's also great to have some really esteemed, awesome panelists that we have here with us. So, we shall talk about something that makes the entire world go round, okay? We shall talk about money. Money makes the world go round. Our session is about money, money, money. It's a rich man's world. We shall be talking about investments. We shall be talking about how to raise capital to grow your business. We have our very esteemed speakers here with us. Let me at the outset take the opportunity to thank the three of you all for being here with us. We have Mr. Mohit Satyanand, co-founder, Teamwork Arts. Mr. Mohit is an entrepreneur, he's a strategic advisor, he's an investor. The best man to talk about money, huh?
I'm not talking, I'm only getting two others to talk, so I'm a good ringmaster.
All right, so that's Mr. Mohit who will be moderating for us. We have Mr. Palepu Sudhir Rao, Managing Partner, WRVI Capital India. Sudhir Rao is the Managing Partner of Indus Partners in WRVI Capital India, a global technology venture fund platform. He's a chartered accountant and a chartered management accountant. Thank you so much, Mr. Rao, for being here with us. Everybody, let's get some energy going. Let's give it up for Mr. Rao. We also have joining us this evening Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, founding managing partner at Ambit Pragma. Rajiv is the founding managing partner at Ambit Pragma, a mid-market private equity fund. He's been investing in this space for over 2 decades and operating in roles across sales and marketing for more than 6 years. Thank you so much for being here with us. Let's give it up, ladies and gentlemen. All right, just a couple of hygiene announcements. Can I request everybody to put your mobile phones in the silent mode? Mine's silent. I would request everybody to do it. It's always nicer, give the speakers the space and respect. Thank you. Thank you. Also, check. So this is something really cool that I have for you. This is a portable mic, okay? If you have any questions to our speakers, our panelists, all I'm going to do is throw it to you, and you speak into it. Speak into it.
Mic check.
Yeah, so that's a very cool catch box that I have here for you. We're also trying to make Imagine 2019 a green and a zero waste festival, a zero waste conference. So please, everybody, help us in accomplishing this. Now, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's hit the session. Please give it up for our panelists as we talk about money, money, money. It's a rich man's world.
Yeah, it's clearly a rich man's world because we thought there'd be a lot of people here trying to figure out what's the best way to raise money. There are not many people here, so obviously not many people in the entertainment industry need to raise money. Which is quite different from what the situation was when we began working in the entertainment space in the early 90s. At that point in time, there were only 3 ways to start a business. The first was that you had a rich father. The second was that you had a direct line to a public sector bank, and the chairman would give you loans. And the third was you started on a hope and a prayer. And that's how we began. We began on a hope and a prayer, and that prayer carried us some way. And you now hear this word called bootstrapped, which is that you start a business with whatever little savings you have, and it's almost like this is some kind of aberration. People come to me, and I now invest in startups, and they say, we bootstrapped this company for 1.5 years, and it's now time that we raise some money. And I say, well, the first 3 businesses I started were bootstrapped respectively for 17, 24, and 45 years. So this is really the change that I want to underline, which is that we've moved from a situation where you either bootstrapped or you raised capital from friends, family, or banks, to to a situation where risk capital is made available. And this risk capital is made available at every stage of the growth of a company. And so it goes from angel funding, which is people who have a little bit of money and can write small checks, 5 lakhs, 7 lakhs, 10 lakhs, etc., who see people through from the friends and family stroke bootstrapping stage to the next stage. So this is seed funding or angel funding. The next stage is where you have organizations represented by these gentlemen, which is venture capital, which is when the company has already demonstrated that it can do some kind of growth, and they bring growth capital on. And then the third stage is that you have private equity companies which come in and prepare these companies to become large, maybe not unicorns, but large, and maybe at some point in time they finally get into capital markets, they list on stock exchanges, and then people can buy and sell them. Now, what is the value of this? I think the value of all of this is enormous. And even though the angel funding model began in Silicon Valley, it's really found traction in India. And the data I have suggests that over the last 4 years, some 5,300 companies have received money from angels. And I think here the word angel really becomes apt, because these are 5,300 people whose dreams have at least got wings for a year or 2 or 3. They may go bust, but at least for 2 or 3 years, some money is coming to give wings to their dreams and perhaps take them to the next stage. So these are 5,300 dreams which have been given breath, they've been given life, and they've been given support by people who may be people like me, who have some experience of entrepreneurship. They know what the trials are, they know what the travails are. They're not just hard-headed bankers who want return. They're willing to hold their hand sometimes, perhaps help them get a little bit organized, and also a shoulder to weep on. So this is a huge change that I've seen over the last 25 or 30 years. Each of these gentlemen in their own way have seen how the industry has shaped over the last slightly shorter periods of time, because they're not quite as old as I am. But I'm going to ask each of them to share their experiences of the transformation in the finance industry since they began. Let me begin with Sudhir.
Thanks a lot, Mohit. Good backdrop. Where do I begin? I was an entrepreneur as well when I started out. I finished my Provident Fund savings that was my own. And I realized that the dream that I was pursuing at that point in time would not mature in the way I thought it might happen. I had wise counsel when I went to a potential lender to me. And he said, how are you allocating your capital in terms of money for working capital versus putting money in a manufacturing enterprise? And we were thinking of doing both. And that sort of triggered my mind, and I said, whatever else I'm going to raise beyond what money I have to allocate it wisely to a particular pursuit. And only then can you really make that whole cycle continue to work. I think one of the key things that we miss out on is the real pursuit of business is to get customer capital. Yeah, you get money out of your customer. And often we miss that point. Now, between the time that customers start to pay you or leave money on the table for you to keep, you need somebody to sit and understand that time gaps between when the customers will pay and when we're pursuing it. Right? So there's a lot of effort, no outcome, or less outcome, or yet to happen outcomes. And you need financing. Now this financing, whether it's bootstrapping, whether it's somebody else to share in that journey of that potential outcome, is really, can either be disorganized, unorganized, or organized. And that is a reflection of how you run your own businesses. If you seek to be deeply organized, I believe that there are organized pools of capital that you can tap. Now, when we were much younger, there were no organized pools, and I agree with you there. that there was no venture capital to really speak of. There used to be 2 institutions when I started 35 years ago, or 40 years ago. When my dream was there, I came to Delhi and would knock. There were 2 guys, that's it. Even as early as 2000, 20 years ago, angel never existed. So then animal never existed, or that bird never existed. It was
Enlightened human beings.
Enlightened.
Enlightened.
So it is true that even today it escapes most, by the way, because we don't know how to reach these people. We don't know how to get there. And you can't get there. It's not so simple because even now I can tell you, it's a little club, right? When we started public markets, forget about these private markets that we're talking about, go back to public markets. At that time, all the greedy individuals were the angels, right? Mostly money chases money. That's what happens actually. I think we should not fool ourselves as entrepreneurs that somebody is sharing my dream that your dad and your mom can do. I don't even know if your brother and sister should do. So, business is a very real issue, and this hope as a strategy doesn't work at any point of time. And I believe that if you do it in a systematic, in a professional way, potentially you get backers. Whether they're bankers, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's you as an angel, me now in my avatar as a venture capitalist. What we're seeking really is that match. It's a very light match. It's very tough. Because we have to believe each other, because we're trying to bet on that time gap between effort and outcome. So to me, when we say whether the organized capital is available, it's available for a few. I just want to repeat that. It's available. The first check that Mukesh Bansal got was $250 million in India because he had delivered in the past. We bet on a 61-year-old entrepreneur more recently, but he grew the business from zero to today he has an order book in India of $400 million. We give $2.5 million from our fund. But the question is really, it's not about capital being available or not available. There's plenty of money available. Plenty. Just to give numbers, the world has $300 trillion of cash, which earns less than 3% a year. Nobody likes your risk. So that's one point. So money exists in plentiful. It's like the ocean. How much can you drink? How much can you actually have? How much will match is really the issue. I don't think there's a problem of having it.
Yeah, we'll go into the details of how to create that match a little bit later, but I'm going to ask Rajiv to share his experience of how this pool of capital has got distributed into several pools and what the nature of those pools are and how you've seen it change over the past 20 odd years.
Yeah, I can speak for more formal capital, what we call institutional capital, which is not coming from individuals. So in the last couple of decades, what I have seen is there has been very clear trends established in terms of formation of different types of pools based on the amount of risk that investors can take. So we talked about angel investing. Everybody understands that there is a very high rate of failure when we talk about very, very young companies. Any investor who is going to invest in that stage of business takes into cognizance the fact that there is a risk that he or she is going to lose capital. It's very risky capital. Consequently, their expectation is that for the ones where it works, I'm going to make a whole lot of money to compensate for the losses. That's what we typically ascribe in very early stage companies to angel investors. Individuals have that ability. If you have the disposable income, if you have the risk-taking capability, and generally speaking, if you have some knowledge about the industry, to partake in that risk. Angel investors will not venture, generally speaking, into areas which they don't understand. So if you are, for example, in the arts entertainment industry, it is highly likely that if you have to raise capital from an angel investor for your early stage company, you should go looking for people who have some experience, either of investing or running or participating in that business. This is one formalized pool of capital. It is also getting organized now. Angels coming together. For example, you have Indian Angel Network, you have Mumbai Angel Network, and so on, where angels are pooling their knowledge and their capital to say, when I look at a business, there is risk. It may go belly up, I may lose capital. Let's share the risk. So instead of one person committing X rupees, there will be 10 people committing X rupees. So there is spreading of risk, and consequently, hopefully, you will be over a portfolio, as in large number of investments, be okay. This is one pool. If you go back, and I have 20 years that I've been watching this industry, if you look at 2000 to 2006-07 period, there was virtually no angel investing in India. It was a term that we used to read about in books as practitioners. We often used to wonder, where are the angels? And the joke often I would tell everybody was, your father, uncle, relatives, people whom you meet at dinner tables, they are your angels. There are no other angels in India. After 2008, things started changing a little. There, the economy grew, disposable incomes increased, and there was internet. Suddenly, everybody had a mobile phone. People were thinking about new ways of doing this. The venture capitalists, they catalyzed the industry. If I go back and look at 2000 to 2007, the other pools of capital which we have talked about, which are venture capitalists like Sudhir, who took risks, private equity guys like me who wanted to be in a slightly more established companies, we had the entire land to ourselves. I remember when we set up the first fund way back in 2000, a private equity fund, there were 4 funds in India.
How many are there now?
Now I don't want to count. Indian funds estimated to be about 450. And there are about 500 global investors who come in, do a deal and go away. Right? As 4 funds, there was no entrepreneur who would not reach us. I was inundated. I was taking 16 calls a day. Why did you fund my company? So we were spoiled for choice. What it also meant was that we didn't have the attention span to be able to look at anything. That was 2000 to 2007, but that changed. The global financial crisis happened. Mobile phone penetration started increasing. New models started emerging. Yields, as in the cost of money and the expected return from that money in developed markets, especially US and Europe, dropped. We went into negative yield, 0 yield. So if you have money, what do? You go looking for a business venture which can give you some return. 2% is not acceptable. Nobody would be happy here, right? 2% return. So global investors then started coming to India. The venture capitalists were the first ones. I remember between 2008 and 2012, we had this wave of global VCs coming to India. All the names that we hear about today, from Axel to Sequoia to Norvest, all these global VCs, Silicon Valley based, they started allocating capital. Allocating. They did not have a fund for India because they were still not sure about the country. So they said, I have a pool of money which is sitting in the US. It may be a $200 million pool. Let me try and invest $2, $3, $4 million into 5, 6 companies and invest $15 million. But it was a wave. Similarly, a lot of private equity capital. There were fads. There were periods when over a 12, 18-month period, a particular sector would attract huge amount of money, and 12 months later, it would not be able to attract any capital. I can give you an example. I also track healthcare as a sector. In 2012, let me give you some number. Because we had some healthcare portfolio investments, so I tracked these numbers. The total investment in healthcare, hospitals, diagnostic centers, name it, right, was $200 million. In 2013, 1 year later, that number was $1.6 billion. In 2014, that number was $200 million. So it was a 1 year period in which a flood of capital. People like us are human beings. We also have herd mentality. My next fund manager is investing in healthcare. I also want to invest in it. I don't want to miss out. And then everybody goes and writes a $10, $20 million check, and suddenly you have $1 billion there. Next year, everybody's moved on to a next fad. Logistics companies. Suddenly, logistics companies will start attracting capital. Media and entertainment. All of you are from that industry. You must have seen 2004 to 7. All kinds of media companies got funded. Television channels, radio channels, broadcasters, teleports, you name it. Suddenly the capital dried up after 2007. No more money coming. Everybody was wondering what's going on. So the risk has shifted. The important point here for all of you to remember, if you are in the market raising capital, you are raising capital relative to not your competitor in your industry. You are also raising capital relative to another industry. People have a choice. If I believe that media entertainment industry doesn't offer a good enough return, I will just simply stop investing. I have a choice. I will just move on to some other industry.
So Rajiv, what you have some investments in the media entertainment industry. You've been watching other people there. What are the lessons you learned there as an investor? What does this industry offer? And if you were able to rewrite your experience as an investor and go back to 2012 or 13 when you floated this fund, how do you tackle this industry, if at all?
So I must say that my experience with investing in media entertainment has been mixed at best.
Just for the record, Rajiv is an investor in Teamwork, which I co-founded. So hopefully you won't be too rude about that particular investment. But otherwise, please feel free.
Yeah. But that's not the only investment in media. We have others as well. So
I said among others.
Among others, right. So the overall experience is mixed with media space. And I'll tell you where the problem lies, really, when we think about this. The first issue that we have encountered is with perceptions of people about themselves. Everybody in the media entertainment industry thinks that they are creative. And let me assure you, that is not true at all. As an observer from the outside, we can see who are creative and who are not creative. But everybody likes to believe they are creative. And the first problem really begins there. What it tends to do is tends to influence the way they conduct their business. They conduct themselves. Creative people, by naturally they tend to argue that, we are creative, we are freewheeling. My canvas is infinite. Today I will do this, tomorrow I will do that. I may wake up in the morning and just not feel like working. These are things we like to hear. Or we don't like to hear, rather, because as institutional providers of capital, we would like somebody who's really committed to their business and committed to one thing. We find that creative guys don't do that. And when everybody thinks that they are creative, who are we backing? The second thing we find, therefore, is that people really don't do what they tell us they are going to do. So when they try and raise capital, everybody has come to us saying, this is our plan, this is how I'm going to grow my business, these are the various things I'm going to do. So it's a selling phase, right? We are listening, we are observing, we are understanding.
But that's true any entrepreneur, whichever sector. They'll sell their plans to.
So they do.
Yeah.
The trick is that when the investment takes place, more often than not, the media and entertainment professionals drift. What they have told us they will do is not what they do. This is a big problem. They take on more risks. And I can give you an example. You see this in the corporate sector as well. Let's talk about film financing, for example. There was a time when there was so much corporate financing in films taking place.
But there was also a time when film financing was from the underworld. So there's been
Correct.
at least a positive shift there.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's been very positive. In fact, there has been institutionalization of capital in that space. Corporate funding came in. And then after a 2-3 year period, that funding has vanished. It has vanished because the people who were taking the decisions in terms of allocating that capital, they took decisions which did not protect that capital. So they overextended themselves. Let me give you an example. I am a guy who greenlights films, and I suddenly found myself with 200 crores of capital. So hitherto I had been funding a 10 crore, 20 crore movie. Now I have 200 crores. So suddenly the next project I am going to do is a 65 crore movie. Because I must do the big tentpole movie with the big stars, because that is what is assured. Nothing in this life is assured. 165 crore movie bombs, my entire portfolio shakes. That money is gone.
Eventually, it's all about allocation of capital, right? Whether
Correct.
you're looking
So-
at the macro level or the micro level.
Right. So the thing is that in media entertainment, the issue is that the lack of discipline is the biggest problem.
I would say that that's true of every industry. There is no industry or no human being, set of human beings who are not subject to the issues related to discipline.
Of course.
Whether it's a technology company, whether it's an apparel company, shoe company, hotels, doesn't matter. So to me, I think creativity and order combined alchemically create a very different proposition. I think singling out that media and entertainment is a creative business, not true. I think the apt name here is event and entertainment. Right? The event element of it is very mechanical. Somebody has to put this deal out here. Somebody's got to get the typeface right. Somebody's got to get, every piece of it. But to choose orange or gray or some colors is creativity. But I think that's true of making a phone, making, that box, just thinking aloud. That's creativity out there.
So I think.
So I don't think we don't invest
Sure.
because of that.
No, I think, Sudhir, the point you're making is, in general, a very valid one, which is that for an organization to be successful, it needs to balance creativity and order. I think the point that he's making is not very distant from that, but he's just saying that in the creative, in the entertainment industry, there is this sort of extra value given to being creative, which may or may not be true, and therefore they're more likely to go astray. I think that's, as a predilection, more likely.
Let me sort of paraphrase that. The
I'll also say that to some extent I agree with him.
No, I wouldn't want to say that, because I tell you, I see that hope streak in every industry.
Right.
I've done 2,000 public offers in my life. Whether it's soya bean processing or aquaculture or shoe company, it doesn't matter. Everybody believes that they're extremely creative because that's the appeal quotient with them and their customers. That's the visceral component, that's the experiential component, which all of us need with our customers. Whether it's B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter.
Fair enough. That's
my
a
point
very
is,
general point.
I think my point is that you have to understand business as opposed to when you use the word discipline or being irrational, right? We seek disproportionate return to effort, typically. That's what is return. High returns are when there is disproportionate response to a proportionate input.
You're
Not
talking
the
as
other
an
way.
investor. That's what all of us investors do.
No. I think the
we want to make money off other people's effort.
Yeah.
That is joke.
No, what I'm saying is, I don't think there's an issue really about one industry or the other. The hard part is sustaining this, making this continue to work sustainably, persistently, day on day.
Fair enough. I want to just go back, since since Rajiv has a couple of investments over here, and ask, how would you do it differently now? Would you not get into the sector, or would you get into the sector and do it differently?
I often think about that all the time. And my first reaction is that perhaps I would have never made those investments. I should have never made those investments. Perhaps if given a choice, today again, I would not make those investments. But that said, there is an opportunity in the media entertainment space in general, which is very compelling. And just to simply say that I will not invest is not the sufficient. Which brings to the question that what would I do differently? I think the first foremost thing is that pick the entrepreneurs we are working with extremely carefully.
That's true again of any industry, right?
Yeah, but it is more difficult to discern that in the media entertainment.
Can I ask whether you think you got seduced
No,
without
you get
being
seduced
smart?
all the time.
Okay, fine.
You get seduced. Every investment you get seduced.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
But I think the choice of the entrepreneur makes a very, very big important difference. What we are looking for is a balance between creativity, arts, and commerce. Hopefully, that will translate into some kind of discipline. If you can find that balance, assess that, I think what we would ideally like to do, if I have given a choice, if I have to make that investment again, I would like to observe a person for a considerable period of time. For us, a considerable period would be 2-3 years. So I would work with that entrepreneur, keep in touch, observe, see what they are doing, that their actions reflect the attributes and qualities that we cherish as an investor. And that would be the most comforting.
You know, I want to echo this because I've been investing largely on an individual basis as an angel for the last, I'm coming to the end of a 5-year cycle, and during that period I've invested in 23 or 24 companies. And even though I promised myself that I'd actually draw object lessons only at the end of 5 years, I think the deepest lesson that I've learned in the last 4+ years is exactly this. And I've already put that in place, which is I now don't make an investment unless I spend not a couple of years, but anything between 6 months and a year talking to that person. My advice is available free, which also then means that people are coming to me from sectors which I understand and have some experience in. And it's only if that sort of synergy works that we then naturally move towards a situation where that person says, okay, now I think we have a plan in place, we need 1 crore rupees, will you help us? And then I prefer to be in a situation where I say, okay, I'll make 10, 15, 20 lakhs out of that available, and then perhaps on the back of the fact that you have an anchor investor, you can raise up money. So this is exactly would you like to share something? If you had to look at the arts and entertainment space, what would you be looking at?
I love it.
To invest in?
Yeah, why not?
So what would you look at? What would you look for?
I just want to see that there is structure. I don't believe that there are no, if I go to the literature festival, I find authors who are very disciplined. And there are first-time authors. And you have all kinds, right? Writing history to fiction. When we invest, we're investing in tomorrow. It means we're investing blind. I think let's get that clear. When entrepreneurs come to us and talk and give me a business plan, he's blind as well. So firstly, we have to be on the same page. Your forecast and my understanding of your forecast will have differences. That's the only thing. So, but we have to bet on a forecast because the IRR is generated over time in the future. And this whole investment in effort to derive an outcome is what we are actually investing in. The cash we put is on effort. So I think the question really is, can we quantify effort more appropriately rather than get stuck in potential outcome descriptions? So I like people who can discuss their effort well. Either they put it in the past and I can see it, or I can't always see the effort of the past because in the future all of that effort is irrelevant. The A320 when it arrived had a crash. The MAX has had a crash. Do you stop inventing, investing, innovating, etc.? No. So this is risk. I think one thing we must all be clear about is that when you take money from somebody else or when I'm giving money to somebody else, then I'm taking risk. That's important. Once you understand that, most people cannot take risk. That's why we put money in savings accounts. Great banks, they say, have a high CASA ratio, which means what? It means depositors are dumb or they don't take risk, either which way. When you can earn money, why would you leave it in somebody else's safe and not in your safe? Because he's going to give you 0 return. Why? But safe is the preferred approach. Where do you put your money? Do you give it to a neighbor because he says, I'm going to start a banana vending business? No. Let's give it to a bank. And what does the bank do? The bank thinks he's damn smart, or the banker thinks he's educated for it, and then he takes a punt because somebody gives a business plan. It may be debt, but yet he's taking and giving the money out. And in the future, we die. We fall apart. We collapse. But for us as investors, we have to take risks. Others won't be in the business. I'm not in the business not to fail. And I do not expect any entrepreneur in the room to come here thinking he's only going to be successful. Not true. As long as we understand the failure points, potential failures we can have, potential issues about effort. When you discuss effort, entrepreneur, one single person, their effort is never enough. I need a carpenter. I need a welder. If I don't get that welder on time, kiss the idea that this event is starting on time. Who can build teams? Who can think through? Do they checklist themselves? Do they plan things? Do they do stuff? Do they review stuff? And I don't care if he's a 23-year-old, frankly. I don't care if he's a 60-year-old. So it's not experience only. It is fundamentally taking risk with somebody who will be systematically reviewing the forecast. That we shall forecast and fail is a known. How much can you push failure out? How much can you manage that? And in that you require resources, which is capital.
Right.
Capital is basically, in my mind, managing, pushing failure out. And you get a return before that or after that, great.
So Rajiv, I want to ask you that if you were to advise a young entrepreneur, or not so young one, so someone who's 23 or someone who's 60, who says, I need capital to grow my business, and I'd like to come to you for capital. And what would you tell him are the 3 or 5 top things that you would like to see when he comes back with a plan?
So if a entrepreneur were to approach us, I would say you have to keep things really simple. If I were to list 3 points, I think the first thing that we would look for is great ambition. How entrepreneurs present their business, what they believe it can become, in what time frame it can become what it can become, is a very important marker of their ambition.
Great ambition, okay.
Right? So ambition is critical. Now that ambition also, it should be ambitious enough. It should be within the realm of possibility. It should be audacious, but it should not be unreachable. So there is a fine line, and but that's something that you want. Certainly every entrepreneur should have. So you need to have clarity in your head about what you are going to do, how large is it going to be, how are you going to execute. The second thing I would say is what is the approach that they are going to take to deliver on that ambition. When it comes to approach, I would suggest that there are 2 or 3 broad focus areas that if entrepreneurs were to think about, it would be very helpful. The first one is, what is the human resources I am going to need to deliver on that ambition? Ability of an entrepreneur to truly understand what team is going to be required, what skills are going to be required, how large, is very important. If that realization doesn't exist, they will not build the team. It is also likely that if the realization exists, they will still not build the team. But at least you need to begin with know what is needed to be able to execute on that ambition. Second, there has to be a systemic approach. Building a business is about institutionalization. It is not a shop. It is not something that the entrepreneur is going to sit there and run every day. It is about delegation of responsibility and authority. It is about demanding work from people in a form and manner with tools so that it gets done. The span of control is going to go away from the hands of the entrepreneur. So, what systems are going to get created is very important.
How do you judge that?
Through discussions as to what are they proposing they are going to invest in, what tools will they be employing, what systems they propose to create. If they don't know, they can ask for help. The fact that you go and say that I am going to need that and I'm going to need your help is a great start. So I think the second thing that I would say that entrepreneurs should try and build some clarity about is about the approach they are going to take in terms of people, in terms of the systems, and of course when you are laying out your ambition in terms of the capital and other resources you are going to need. And the third thing I would say is something that entrepreneurs can't do, but they can, through their conduct, establish themselves as truly authentic individuals. If I may say, it's a very nebulous thing to describe, but do what you have told the investors that you are going to do. Be truly good intentioned about what you do. Be truly transparent and honest with your investor as to what are the challenges that you are going to face. If you are able to anticipate that, if you are able to communicate that very clearly, I think it gives great comfort to investors that I am talking to a person who understands, who truly wants to be transparent and honest about this. And there is no bigger comfort than that.
I'll turn to you. What's your experience with transparency and honesty, especially when there are business problems with people you invest with?
Tough times, people can't be transparent enough. Good times get shared. So the real, and it's always again I repeat this, it's in the forecast. The problem is not when I'm cutting a check. That takes now it's nanoseconds. And you hit a button and the cash goes out of your bank and hits his bank. So cutting a check is hardly an issue. It's after that. So he receives cash. As they say, matha ghum gaya. And often it does. Because we don't know how to receive cash. We are not taught how to receive success. That's the other thing. The humility of success is not taught in any school, and somehow character is not built around. Often it's only taught in families that have faced failure or not being humble enough when they were successful. Not the humility of failure, but the humility of success. And that is something that you have to just, it's a call we take. And more importantly, I think it's important to understand the purpose that you've got this business for, right? One is you're making money, and let's not, this is not an NGO we fund. We fund the ability to make money. This money has to be distributed to people who participate in the creation of that money. There are capitalists, there are employee stakeholders, there are vendors, and that understanding that you're running a money machine, and this money machine has to be shared and sustained and built to scale because you have a particular purpose in your mind. If that purpose centricity is clear to all stakeholders, I'm one of the passengers in the car as a capital provider. Not the only, just like the entrepreneur is not the only, nor is the employee only the only, the customer. Every stakeholder and that understanding that comes out sometimes very visibly when even a 20-year-old talks to me. They come out very clear, lucid, which age doesn't matter, their backgrounds don't matter, nothing matters because they paint the forecast in a certain manner. At that point of time, we have to take a bet because we really don't know whether all of the assembly will take place. We really don't know whether all these customers that we're talking about will happen. I didn't know that a Swiggy would happen in my life. I didn't realize it. But he's transformed the way that organization satisfies my need to eat.
Instant gratification.
No, not instant.
Almost.
No, not fair. Not fair. Not fair. I don't think that's fair because the pursuit of that, as they've called themselves, the hunger saviors, the pursuit to give my son a 3 a.m. meal and me a 2 p.m. meal or a tiffin at 7 a.m. Imagine what does it take for that organization to respond. In that process, you may fail. You may not make the money. The customer may not have put the money on the table. B, we're setting up a whole network to do this. So it's not going to make money. And therefore, we equity fund it. We say, put $1 billion. It's okay. We understand that 50 million people most likely will be hungry. It's a tough call. Right? I'm doing something for farming right now. Super hard to think that I can actually move the needle for a farmer. But what do I know sitting in a city, in an air-conditioned room? But I have a sense when the founder comes and tells me, I'm trying to do this. So if you look for sincerity of purpose, then you look at whether he's got the capability and competence. He need not have it. I actually don't overweigh his competency anymore. If he says, I'm going to try to hire this guy, can you help me hire the other guy? I'm very happy to sit in an interview with him. So as long as he understands his leadership quotient versus his doership, then potentially that entity is likely to scale for us.
Great. You know, I just want to end the formal part of it by saying that I once knew a gentleman who started an IT engineering firm, and he was already running a business of a couple of hundred crores, which was a lot at that time in the late 80s. And I asked him, you know, what's the most important thing? And he said, the ability to judge the character of human beings I employ. And I asked him, how often have you made a mistake? And he looked at me straight in the eye. He's 10 years older than me. He looked me straight in the eye and said, never. Now, this was an audacious statement, but there must be something there. Because this man is Shiv Nadar, and the company he's built is incredible, but he had that ability to say, never, straight in my face. You know? So that is obviously a really, really, really rare
it's a
characteristic.
Tough thing, yes.
But in his case, one has to believe it, because he's delivered, and he said, this is my key deliverable. That I have never made a mistake in hiring somebody. So we'll stop over there, because I think there may be some questions, and we have about 12 or 15 minutes for questions. So
Chuck the box
please, we'll chuck the box around. That gentleman there, and then Sid, and I am going to ask him whether he sees me as an angel or a devil, because I've invested in his company.
I just wanted to know, in case IPs help.
Do IPs help?
Yes.
Yeah, does the ownership of intellectual property help in A, in making that decision, and B,
Yes.
in making it a viable? Quickly, Rajiv, and then Sudhir.
IB as an investment bankers.
No, IP.
Intellectual property.
Intellectual property. Oh yeah, of course, intellectual property helps. Intellectual property is not certainly everything that is patentable. And I think that's something we need to banish from our mind. Just because you can get a patent is not the only intellectual property. Intellectual property is also in name, embedded inside the organization, right? It could be a way of work, system of work. And that is what lends competitive advantage to the business. So absolutely, yes.
Sudhir.
I think if we'll talk about IP, right?
Yes.
So there are, the way we see IP is the way it's defined, which is patents at one end. Patents being inventions. You've done some serious inventive step. Then you come into the innovation area, where typically we build trade secrets. Right? So there's a secret sauce that develops that's typically not, you can't write it down. You can document it. You can have ISO 9001, and you can do CMMs, and you can do plenty of process-led trade secrets held within the organization, which are very valuable. And the third thing is the market must acknowledge what you're talking about, which is the ability to actually have trademarks. And those trademarks can either have trade or they're just trademarks. So our evaluation of the IP cycle is the entire monetizability of whatever you're talking about. And it's typically a combination of all of the above. Because it's never possible that just one piece alone is likely to,
What's the cycle generally you look at? For example, if it's
So we invest, from our fund, if I were just to say our fund, we invest more often than not, 90% of our businesses will have patents.
Sure.
So we back companies that are really inventive. about a third of our money goes into semiconductors. So it's like deep, first level stuff. And we're a tech fund. The second, a third of our bucket goes into essentially where hardware is making a difference. Right? So there's materials, there's hardware. It's not intellect only. There's a bit of engineering, material, etc. And a third of it is essentially in the third part, which is getting it out there, right? So getting it to be consumable. So patents per se are not consumable, but when they get to the third bucket, which is actually the effort to turn them into trademarks and into trade, monetizing.
How about in the space of events and entertainment?
So I think, see, if you look at creative work, which is copyrightable,
Yes.
yeah, so it's investing in copyright banks if you want. So yes, I would say we could just go and buy a media library. For example, Invesco just bought 11% of Z's library, and there are bids on it. There were bids up to yesterday in terms of who's going to get a piece of that action, right? So, do we invest? Yes. The answer is yes.
But another example
but
from our own experiences, Jaipur Literature Festival. That's an IP, right?
Exactly.
It's not an
Exactly.
IP in the sense that it's patentable,
Absolutely.
but it's something that you can build on.
Sure.
And a broader definition of IP, I think, which goes along what he was saying, was the one which Warren Buffett used, which is a moat. Can I have a moat around my business? And that moat can take many forms. How you work, what brand name you have, etc., etc. You come to Sidhu and a question. You can throw it. Yeah.
So suppose traditionally, investments are more biased towards companies who have the products. Let's say who can create products, wherein the investor see the entry point and exit point and see the P&L very clearly. But in recent times, there are investment happening on the service front also. How from the investor side, what you are seeing in the service-based company on a P&L side, what is the exit point and where is the entry point for a service-based company on an investment front?
Yeah, see, in my experience in India, over the last 2 decades, services companies have raised far more capital than product companies. So the perception that services companies don't attract capital is not true at all. I would believe that services company capital raise would outpace product-oriented companies by 100x over the last 2 decades. That's the order of magnitude difference between product companies and by product companies, by services, I don't mean manufacturing companies. They are like services businesses. Investors like services companies, but they will invest in services companies because they need to see scale. By nature, services companies are linear. Okay, so if I have 100 people and my revenue per employee is X, when I have 1,000 people, the revenue per employee may still be closer to X only. And therefore, the way to scale that business is to have more people. I employ more people, I have more locations, more, whatever, and that's the way I grow. That's the challenge with services companies. Scaling with people is very challenging. Companies which are able to break that equation, where per person productivity or contribution to the organization changes. If it is $100 today, 5 years later it's going to be $500. That changes the equation. That's how you build scale. Services companies you should look at as investors. We will want to see that change in productivity take place, and that's the key.
And that happens, for example, with software as a service.
It's a classical linear business. If you look at software as a service, or software as a service is a non-linear business.
It's a completely.
But if you look at a software company, the way it exists in India, they've been linear businesses for the last 3 decades.
Those are services companies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
We have a slightly different view on this. So I think the old notion of service was labor, yeah. And when you consume service, it's brandable. It is, you can change the metric that you consume, and so therefore, if you look at cutting hair, it was called a barber. He's now called a stylist, and it's non-linear. The same 1 hour can fetch that stylist 3 lakhs a month. whereas there can be a guy who gets 3,000 rupees a month. So what we like is to see how that service is engineered for brand values. Coming back to a patent issue, right? When you brand services, you change how it's consumed. So you have to think about services like manufacturing, and we call it service engineering. So, for example, we invested in a robotics company, but we don't sell robots. We sell the analytics that comes out of it. So we combine intellectual prowess with what the machine can do. But what we deliver is a P&L change, and we charge for P&L change. So we change the metric, right? So it's no longer labor, it's no longer linked, or he can't see. See, each of you, when you look at, when he said Jaipur Literature Festival, is it an event or is it a property? And therefore you're calling it intellectual property. So what are you consuming? Are you consuming literature or are you consuming an event? And that marginal shift that takes place, that what you consume is an experience of literature. When I go to Jaipur, into JLF, I consume the beauty of 50,000 people. A lot of people say, हमें नहीं जाना है, बहुत भीड़ है वहाँ पे. हम जाते हैं उसी के लिए actually. भीड़ में जो समझ में आता है हमें. And it's like a library which is open. So when I consume that, I don't care whether I have to pay 50,000 to go there and come back.
We need lots of more people like you.
So when you build a service enterprise, please look at consumption.
We'll take one more question because she's already breathing down her neck. Ladies in red can be very dangerous. Rahul.
So, sir, I just wanted to ask all three panelists here, when you have invested in a team who are young, budding entrepreneurs and all that, and when you get in a professional setup into the team, say a CEO, a CFO, and that sort of kind of a professional umbrella, how, in your experience, how has it worked? If you can give me an example in 100%.
There's often this temptation for the investor to
work. Has it not? And if you can just share a few examples.
Right. Well, we won't have time to share examples, but just a quick thought. Does this idea of imposing a structure which is sort of external to the entrepreneur into an organization for the sake of order, does it in your experience by and large work or not?
By and large, if I've made money, it's because it worked. So if I didn't get it right, that's why it failed.
Right.
But to think that, so to me there are three R&Ds which must coexist. And the R&Ds that I understand are research and development, which is the creativity element in your language. In our language in engineering, it's research and development. You have to think tomorrow. You have to think hard about inventions. You have to think about what's outside the box. You have to think about changing the status quo. Otherwise, we're not investors. Frankly, we're not in the risk game. Then we just take it as it is. When it's messy outside, let it stay, right? If the air quality is bad, let it stay. The second part is repeat and deploy. Okay, you got it right. But can you repeat and deploy? Can you change the air quality in 20 cities in the country? Not one. So that's second. And the third R&D is rigor and dominate. Right? Scale, size is almost militaristic in nature. So I'm very compassionate and I want to improve the lives of 20 million people. It will not come out of other than serious rigor. So the rigor and that whole notion is another breed altogether. The guy who does research is not the guy who does rigor. It is personalities of people who need to come together, coexist. So when you use the word structure or the notion of break a structure, we must coexist. The Silicon Valley is a fine example where they coexist.
Okay, quick word, Rajiv.
So, to answer the question directly, I believe that some of the things that investors sometimes suggest, which seems like an imposition, is extremely beneficial to the business because they have observed a few things which tells them that there are some gaps compelling them to make the suggestion in the first place. As to how it works in real life, more often than not it doesn't work. Our experience is that teams don't accept, they are human beings. We are only investors, we don't run companies, right? So you can only impose by talking. And beyond that, there's not much you can do. And if human beings decide that they are not going to accept it, and they are not going to play ball, then that's what it is. So it more often than not fails.
Sheila, 6:30. Do we have time for one more question?
We'll take one last.
Okay.
We'll take one last question.
In the context of what both of you shared in different ways, what happened with the Cafe Coffee Day incident? I mean, for entrepreneurs, he or that company is seen as one of the finest entrepreneurial.
Quick word on Cafe Coffee Day, and I'm also going to have a word, but let's start.
He's been a business colleague of mine. I've seen him for 35 years. It's hard to deal with this distance between effort and outcome. We must acknowledge when we paint the future, when we deal with the future, and a lot of leaders take the burden on themselves to be the futurist. And that what happens then is you're the one who starts to stretch. And when the outcomes do not emerge in the time frames that this effort is coming, you start looking at the capital financing that's required. And unfortunately, as far as Siddharth was concerned, he's mistimed it. He couldn't handle the fact that it had failed. So on the face of it, we have a tangible success. Success has different, not connotations, but different matrices, right? On the metric relating to money, he had failed. On the metric relating to, was he, satisfying the idea of 1,700 people, 1,700 cafes being opened, all of the above? Yeah, sure. But bottom line is, and I repeat it here, for everybody in the room that's running business, please be very business-minded. It's a serious issue. And as leaders, it's your call not to go overboard with either your passion and your emotion, because that's what hurts finally, and it hurt him. He couldn't finally stomach the fact that he wouldn't be able to pay his bills.
I want to just add to that and say that, it's okay to have one passion. It's when you see early success in that and say, I am great and I can do 5 other things, then you run into problems. And my view of it, I've never met Siddharth and I have no idea, but just looking at the documents, it seemed that he was trying to do too many things. And then when things start going wrong, especially at the macroeconomic level, then they start going wrong in every business. And then you don't know what you can fund. So I think, in my view, over-diversification was a huge issue because he had many, many businesses.
May I add, he was a fantastic investor. He was a bad entrepreneur.
Yeah. Okay.
Just coincidentally.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, he was an outstanding investor.
Mindtree was a great investment.
Was an investment.
Rajiv, one last one.
Yeah, so I agree with what you guys said. That's your assessment about what really happened. I would like to think about what's going to happen. And I think that's also a part of the question. I think given the stress, the backdrop under which things played out in Cafe Coffee Day, that stress was attached solely to the entrepreneur. Investors are today not able to see Cafe Coffee Day as an institutional play. It was so strongly associated with that one individual. So that one individual is not there, but was he the only guy running the whole company? There is a huge management team which is running the company. There are 2,500, God knows, 5,000 stores. So a lot of stuff is going on. Right? So my view is
I just said that the stress was not, I think it's about just this
So because of the stress, I believe that the outside world saw a very strong association as to what happens inside that company solely with that one individual. And now that you don't have in the picture, everybody believes that that company is going to collapse. It is highly likely that may happen.
It will
Highly
not
likely.
collapse. I just
No. Since
No.
this session is on money, what exactly? I mean, in a short way, we only.
I don't think we can get into that right
I
now.
can answer it in one question.
Just-
Over borrowed. I'm just telling you. Like a farmer commits suicide out of borrowing, Siddharth, they're over borrowed. That's it. I'm just saying somebody dies or commits suicide for a 100,000 rupee loan because they can't take the stress socially.
No. It is
So they
not
kill
like-
themselves.
Okay, let's not get into a discussion on this. I think, all of us are here. We can take it offline, but we have a lady who wants us to wrap up. We're already 7 minutes beyond the time.
Not at all.
Thank
I
you very
think
much. Thank you very much.
I think
for
that was
being here.
very interesting, everybody. Can we give a loud round of applause to our panelists, please? Thank you so much, Mr. Mohit, for being a fantastic moderator.
Mohit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sudhir Rao. Thank you, Mr. Agarwal, for being here with us.